All right, a little shadowing going on, but we'll deal this morning. We'll deal today. All right, here we go. Today's meerkat is Israel is the only friend you have in the Middle East, and here's why. Now, who is the you? Okay, very, very generic here. Israel is the only friend you have in the Middle East, and here's why. Well, believe it or not, the you refers to everyone in the world, refers to any country in the world, and I'll explain why pretty soon. But yes, the you is you, regardless of where you are. You're in America, you're in Europe, you're in Australia, you're in Turkey, right? And you're in trouble. You're anywhere. You're in Egypt. You're in Africa. Israel is the only friend you have in the Middle East. And here's why. As a country, as a government, people have to understand the historic context of what's going on in the Middle East today. First of all, the Middle East is going back to its natural state. What's its natural state? The Middle East always was a group of tribes. It wasn't an area split into nation states. It was a group of tribes based on ethnic or religious separations. Now, today, the two biggest ethnic religious separate groups in the Middle East actually both happen to be Muslims. You're talking Muslims and you're talking about the Shiite Muslims. But there are so many other ethnicities and religious groups here in the Middle East. The Druze, the Kurds, Christians, etc. But they're all minorities. Depending upon what nation state they ended up being carved into, they either were under Sunni regimes, mostly Sunni regimes, or in Iran under a Shiite regime. Okay? Now, what's this with the nation states? The nation states is actually the way the Western world, Europe and the United States carved up the Middle East as colonializers, not to live here, but to control the flow of oil and control the Middle East. Okay? So yes, the nation states of the Middle East, the Arab Middle East, were colonialized countries established by the Western world for control, for business, for oil, for money, control of countries here in the Middle East. But the nation states in the Middle East are not natural to this region, as we see today. What's going on today? Today you have a world war going on in the Middle East between the Sunni Muslims and the Shiite Muslims. That is the state. And then you have all these little minority ethnicities, religious groups, either running for their lives, being massacred, or trying to defend themselves against these two bigger giants, the Sunni Muslims and the Shiite Muslims. Now, where does Israel fit into all this? Israel also is from this area, and it's a Jewish ethnicity. And yes, it's back in its homeland. Here in Israel, regardless you call it a nation state or not, in today's day and time, it is now a nation state. But Israel is here. But what's the difference between Israel and the worldwide war going on between the Sunnis and the Shiites? Well, in the Islamic tradition, in the Islamic religion, they are out to bring Islam to the world. Now, their Quran teaches them they bring Islam to the world by the sword. Right? You use the sword to either force people to convert to Islam or you kill them. All right? And sometimes you let them live as second-class citizens. All right? That is the ultimate aim of Islam. So now there's a division in the Islamic world between the Shiite interpretation of Islam and the Sunni interpretation of Islam. Each one thinks he's correct, and each one believes that the other should be like them, and if not, then they should be killed. Right? It's conversion or change the other to be like you. Here you don't have to convert, they're Muslim, but it's the wrong interpretation of Islam. And they use the sword. So today, what we're witnessing in the Middle East is, first of all, the Middle East nation-state existence, as has been since Sykes-Picot, when the Western world split up and carved up the Middle East and put puppet kingdoms in place to manage and lead. That's all falling apart. The Middle East nation-states are falling apart. Iraq doesn't exist anymore as a nation-state, really. Syria doesn't exist anymore, really, as a nation-state. Lebanon, too, it's a puppet government. Iran, via Hezbollah, they're sort of mostly in control there. It's not really a sovereign country, the Lebanese government. Yemen is now embroiled with Iran, the Shiites trying to overtake and uproot the Yemen government. The whole Middle East is in a total cauldron of change because of this world war taking place between the Sunnis and the Shiites. Now, the one people that actually are good and they actually just want to live and they deserve their own nation state according to their ethnicity are the Kurds. The Western world was so wrong to the Kurds. They split. They didn't give them their own nation state. Rather, they cut them up and put some of them in this Sunni state, some of them in that Sunni state, some of them in this Shiite state. The world was horrible to the Kurds. And they're fighting on all fronts just to defend their lives. And it should be, they should have their own nation state in this area to be able to defend themselves. But the world still is not coming aboard to allow that to happen. And they're fighting on all fronts. Okay? So today, the Sunni and Shiite world war taking place in the Middle East, it's something that the whole world should be afraid of. Why? And forgive me for all the shadowing taking place here today. Because, like we said before, Islam's ultimate aim is to bring Islam to the world. And how do they bring Islam to the world? By the sword. What they're doing today in the Middle East by killing each other is only the beginning of what their ultimate aim is, which is to bring Islam to the world. So first they're killing each other. And here we have also seen their terrorism around the world, whether in London, whether in France, whether in Spain, whether in America, in Australia. So that's just a taste of what they want to bring on a much higher level. So why is Israel the only friend you have in the Middle East? Because Israel wants to live in peace. Israel does not have a global agenda of taking over the world. It does not have, the Jewish people do not have a global agenda of making everyone Jewish. Believe it or not, Judaism is the only one of the three religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, that does not believe everyone in the world has to be Jewish and has to live according to the laws of the Jewish people, of the Jewish Torah. Judaism is not about that. Judaism actually pushes people away from wanting to be Jews. God gave the Torah, the Bible, to the Jewish people. It's for us, our responsibility, all these 613 commandments. You want to take it upon yourself to join us and be a Jew and do 613 commandments? Why? You could be the best person you can be and change the world. They're the 7 Noahide laws you can follow. You don't need all 613. Judaism is a religion where we say you can make the world a better place being who you are, believe in what you want to be, follow the basic laws, which there are 7, and I'll make the world a better place being who you are. You don't have to be Jewish. As opposed to Christianity and Islam that believe that everyone has to be according to their religion. So while Muslims, whether Sunnis or Shiites, are out to convert the world, and therefore the world must be aware of this, and wary of this, and wary of the violence and terror they're going to use to try to accomplish this, Israel, the Jewish state, is not looking to do that. Israel just wants to be the best country it can be to help the world and make a difference in the world and be a light to the nations, whether via the medical technology we bring or the other technology we bring, or how we institute our democracy and the laws we use, that it should be an example for how countries in the world should be, and helping the world, bringing solar technology to the world, bringing water and technology and irrigation technology to help the world. We're constantly involved in helping the world. That's what Israel is about. We're not out to conquer anybody. We're not out to convert anybody. And yet, the Sunni and Shiite Muslims who are killing each other right now, they're out for themselves. And they're then out to go out to the world to bring their global jihad to you. So now we come to the geopolitics of everything, because the Iran deal is the biggest thing on the books right now, the biggest headline. I'm not going into the Iran deal, but people have to ask, why are their governments in bed or making deals with these different Middle East governments, the Arab governments, whether Sunni or Shiite, who are killing each other with horrible human rights, where even their own women, half of their populations, their own women citizens do not have equal rights. And each country has its own rules and regulations against their own women. Forget about other ethnicities, other religious minorities, and et cetera, et cetera. Their own women don't have equal rights. And yet the Western world falls over in terms of doing business and deals and everything. What's it all about? It's exactly that. It's about money. It's about money. It's about interest. Geopolitics is about interest. It's not about human rights. It's not about justice. It's not about what's doing right or working with the right countries. It's about interest and money and business. So when the world brings up lies and spread lies about Israel and about human rights abuses, come on, really human rights abuses? If you really cared about human rights abuses, you'd be all over Iraq, you'd be all over Iran, you'd be all over Syria, you'd be all over some African countries, you'd be all over China. Human rights abuses? Really? That's what you use to go after Israel? It just shows the hypocrisy of the world that they use terminology that people in the street like to talk about in order to delegitimize the one Jewish state that exists in the world, while allowing all the true human rights abusers on the global scale, in the world, to get away with what they're doing. And yet they continue doing business with these places, whether China, whether Russia, whether countries in the Middle East, the Arab countries in the Middle East, and now with Iran, one of the biggest state sponsor in the world, the biggest human rights abuser maybe one of the biggest rights abusers here in the Middle East, don't even give equal rights to their own women. And now the world wants to give them $150 billion and then do business with them. Really? You put Israel down for human rights abuses, the one democracy trying to be the best and where Muslims can live freely with equal rights, and you let all the other countries in the world get away with the horrible human rights abuses they do? It has nothing to do with caring about human rights. It has to do with using terminology to bash Israel, because for their geopolitical interests, to have relations and have the UN votes and have big business with these countries, with these human rights abusing countries, they side with them and they allow them a pass and don't focus on their abuses and why they're bad regimes. And instead, they focus on little Israel, the one country here in the Middle East, trying to do good. So what's the bottom line, folks? The bottom line is, one, don't believe your politicians who are trying to do business in the Middle East and giving a pass to Iran and giving a pass to Syria and giving a pass to China and giving a pass to Russia, not dealing with their human rights abuses. And then when you see your politicians and journalists harp time after time on Israel and putting Israel down, the one democracy in the Middle East where everyone can live freely and have a right to live and have equal rights, where the only country where Muslims can live freely and have a right to live right now in the Middle East, then no, call out their hypocrisy. And the one country you have in the Middle East as a friend that cares about life, that cares about making life better, that cares about humanity, making humanity better, is only Israel. We all have to call out this hypocrisy. It's all about geopolitical interests and business and money. It has nothing to do with making the world a better place. And the biggest spokesman of this hypocrisy today is the United States President Obama, who likes talking about big values. He loves it, and he sounds so good, and he sounds so right.